while we're good. And while we wait a minute to let everyone into the Zoom, feel free to type into the chat a few words about why you are here tonight, what you'd like to learn, and any home retrofits or upgrades you may be willing to share with neighbors. And Diane, can you put up the slides, please?
I think we're ready, or just give another minute for people to log in.
Yeah.
Oh, Pam.
I say we give another minute.
Yeah, let's just wait another minute.
Okay.
You said there was 40 RSVPs?
50, I think.
Oh, 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 30 now. That's a good number.
Okay.
So
But I wasn't saying don't wait another minute. I'm just saying we're getting there.
And I have to say hi to my friend Pam, who's from Santa Monica, California. My oldest childhood friend is on the call. Pam, it's very good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Do you guys all see the slide?
No.
No, how do you, I'm trying, oh, it's back. I'm trying to add something to chat and I wasn't able to do that. There.
Right.
Now we see it.
Sweet bump sets up, but we just want to let you know.
Just so everyone is aware, when we start the presentation, we're going to ask everyone to mute so that we don't hear any background noise.
So it's interesting to note here, we were just talking some updates now at this hour have increased the wind speeds a little bit and increased our wave heights too as we go into the Saturday storm. 20 to 50 miles an hour right along the coastline here for Saturday morning, but 60 to 70, I would higher than that.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for the tip. Okay, so we will be covering a lot in the next hour. Our first presenter will be Wendy Stahl from High Street Hill and Mothers Out Front. Wendy will provide a quick overview of how buildings contribute to climate change and how we all can take action to address this. Next, we will hear from 3 of our Precinct 5 neighbors, Neil Wyszynski, Peter Moyer, and Diane Sokol, about how they are decarbonizing their homes. Diane will then continue on with more details about planning for bigger projects. And since she's an architect, she's very good at that. And I will close out the presentation with a quick look at costs and available rebates. At the end, we will have time for questions. We can stay until about 8:15 tonight for those who can stay with us. Please add questions into the chat as we go along so we can get to them near the end. Definitions. I just wanted to define a few terms here so we're all sharing a common understanding for this presentation. When we say fossil fuels, we're talking about all the types of hydrocarbon fuels extracted from the earth, including natural gas, coal, and petroleum products like heating oil, propane, and gasoline. When these fossil fuels are burned, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, contributing, as you know, significantly to climate change. By decarbonize, we mean the process of reducing or ending our use of these hydrocarbon-based fossil fuels. And finally, electrification goes hand in hand with
Well, Dean's frozen, so I'll tell you, she was going to say that electrification goes hand in hand with decarbonization because when we get off of fossil fuels, we have to switch to electricity as the source of the power for all of our appliances and our equipment. Okay, now Dean's back.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. So Dean, can you start on the background slide? Oh, no, that's Wendy.
Oh, hi.
What?
So thanks, Dean. My name's Wendy. I live over on Edge Hill Road in the High Street Hill District. I'll be presenting a quick overview of how buildings contribute to climate change and what we can actually do about it. Next slide. So you can see here all of the state of Massachusetts's greenhouse gas emissions. The green is residential, the blue is commercial, the yellow is our electricity plants. If we focus on buildings, That's what's circled. You can see that on average in our state, buildings account for about a quarter of our emissions, 10 plus 17. In Brookline specifically, it's higher, it's close to 1/2. And these building emissions come from the gas, the oil, the propane that we use for heating, for cooking, for water heating. Brookline's a little higher because we're a more dense environment, slightly more urban than the average of the state. And so our transit takes up less of the total. Next slide. So in December of 2020, so a year ago, the state published a decarbonization roadmap, which is great, but it's a 200-page document. But it essentially outlines 4 basic steps to get to zero emissions. Reduce energy demand, electrify everything, use 100% renewable electricity, and sequester carbon. Next slide. So tonight, we're going to focus on the first 3. Reduce energy demand, electrify everything, and use 100% renewable electricity. So whether you live in an apartment, a condo, a single family home, if you own or rent, there are different actions we can all take to follow these principles. I'm going to quickly review some of the simple steps that you can tackle right away. And I'm also going to preview the further steps that we'll see in more detail in our upcoming examples from the neighborhood. Next. Okay, so let's start with reduce energy demand. You can see photos here of simple ways to reduce your energy demand. Turn off the lights when you leave the room. Use LED light bulbs. Make sure your appliances are energy efficient appliances. That's what that yellow tag is. Get a programmable or even a smart thermostat. Take public transportation, bike, walk. These are all fairly easy ways to get started with becoming more efficient. Mass Save actually provides free resources for almost all of this. Well, not the riding the T or riding a bike, but they do free home energy audits. You just need to sign up for them online, and they're for renters or condo owners or homeowners or landlords. Anyone can sign up for them. We'll put the link in the chat, but we'll also send out all of our links in a follow-up email. But however, if you didn't RSVP to this event, like if somebody sent you the link, you won't get that email from us unless you send us your email to our email address, which we will also put in the chat. So basically, remember with these simple steps, you'll be using less energy in your home, and
Okay. I will go back to screen share.
Thank you.
I don't know what that was about.
And so you'll end up spending less on your utility bills also. Next slide, please.
I'm trying.
Oh.
Okay, technical glitches here.
Let me know if you want somebody else or myself to share.
Can you advance it yourself, Wendy, while you share?
Yeah, I can. Let's just see if this works.
You seeing it again?
Yeah. Okay, this is the next slide. But to really reduce our home's energy demand, the most important step is to thoroughly seal it from the outside. You need to insulate the exterior of your entire house from head to toe and seal up leaky gaps at your windows and doors. A lot of us live in old buildings that need to actually do this. Newer buildings have this already involved in their construction, but old buildings need to have it added after the fact. Think of it like this. Your house is an essential part of your heating system. The more attention you pay to insulation and air sealing, the less energy you'll need to heat and cool your home. And there are incentives with Mass Save. So the cost of this specifically is heavily discounted. Sometimes it's totally free. We'll show you some of this later on in our neighbors' homes. Next slide. The next principle we're going to talk about is using 100% renewable electricity. The simple way in Brookline to get all of your electricity from renewable sources is to opt up for 100% Brookline all green. We will put the link to this in the chat. All you need to sign up is an old electric bill that has your account number on it. Depending on how much electricity you use each month, every house uses a different amount. It may be $5 or $15 more than the default rate in the town program. The town's default rate provides 50% renewable electricity. So opting up to 100 really isn't too much more expensive. But also remember that any efforts you take to reduce your energy demand will help lower your monthly utility bills. The less you use, the less you spend.
How much?
24.
So further steps to use 100% renewable electricity would be to install solar panels on your roof so you can generate your own green electricity. Here are 3 beautiful examples from Walnut Street in the Pill Hill Historic District. We'll show you more examples in a few minutes when we highlight 3 of our neighbors' homes. If you're thinking about solar panels, a good source of information is from your neighbors. But also there's this website called Energy Sage. It's another good place to start. It's a marketplace essentially associated with the US Department of Energy. And they provide the opportunity to get competing bids from multiple installers really easily. There are also really good incentives, really good incentives through the utilities, also through the state and the IRS for installing solar panels. And you can also lease them instead of purchasing them outright. Okay, now you can move forward. Thank you. So the next principle and the last one that we're going to talk about is electrify everything. Here we see some beautiful pictures of Mothers Out Front members who have electrified various aspects of their homes. The first shows an electric induction stove. The second is an electric car. And the third is an electric heat pump. Essentially, wherever we're using fossil fuels in our home, appliances and equipment, we need to transition to all electric instead. So this means our stoves, our cars, heaters, our water heaters, our clothes dryers, everything. Essentially, you need to be able to disconnect the gas line to your home eventually, or the oil that's delivered to you. Taking the steps to electrify our appliances and heating systems can be bigger and more complicated and more expensive changes that do require some planning ahead. So you're not stuck making a last minute decision when your appliance suddenly reaches the end of its life. But there are mass save rebates for these as well. Next, thank you. So specifically, I want to highlight one opportunity for electrification that many of you might not be familiar with. It's our kitchen stoves. So a lot of us here have gas stoves in our homes. Traditionally, it's been thought of as the best method of cooking. Now, we all know that burning gas harms our climate, but did you know there's more and more data coming out that gas stoves in our homes create air pollution inside our homes, which leads directly to increased rates of respiratory diseases like asthma. It's been studied, it's a fact. So an excellent alternative to gas stoves are electric induction stoves. They're the modern replacement for gas stoves. Now you see this lovely picture on the right. These electric induction stoves are not your grandma's electric stove, and they're not the same as typical glass top electric radiant stoves. Induction cooking actually uses magnetic technology to heat the pan without heating up the whole cooking surface. Notice the cat there? That little kitty cat's perfectly safe. Induction cooking is fast, it's more responsive than gas, it's safe, and it's energy efficient. However, you or your landlord may not be ready to install a new electric induction stove to replace your gas stove. But the good news is that there are other simple options. Next slide. like our library lending program. Mothers Out Front in Brookline has made it super easy for you to try out electric induction cooking. You can borrow a portable kit from the Coolidge Corner Library as part of the Library of Things. We have set up 4 kits that you can reserve either in person or on the library website. The link is being put in the chat. Each kit contains a portable induction plate, a frying pan, a covered pot, and instructions, just as you see in that photo. Many people have even told us that after trying out the library kit, they decided to buy an inexpensive portable unit, and that's all they need for cooking. They still have their gas stove, but they don't really use it anymore. So another big part of your home that will need electrifying is your heating system. We're going to show 3 examples of local homes that have done this transition, but before that, we wanted to give a quick explanation of all electric heat pumps. Heat pumps are able to heat and cool buildings in a single system powered by electricity. In the winter, they draw excess heat from the outside air or the ground if it's a ground source heat pump, and push it into your house. In the summer, it works in reverse and draws the heat out of your house like a traditional air conditioner, but it's more efficient. Heat pumps are more efficient than gas-fired heating systems or oil-fired heating systems, and they are effective in cold climates like ours. Heat pumps generally require some equipment outside the home and some inside the home. You can see in this image, the red is inside the home, the blue is outside the home. And there are a few different ways to set them up, as you will see momentarily. So we're about to show you 3 different ways to install heat pump systems with examples from the neighborhood. But first, we're going to switch who's sharing the screen. And in a moment, when we get the slides up again, we'll start with Neil Wyszynski. So hold on, I'm going to mute myself.
Howdy. Okay. So this is our house, and we live in a standard 2-decker. This is across the street from Robinson Playground on Henry Street. And we put heat pumps into our house back in 2014. So we've had it now for 8 years. And when we were doing this, our primary goal was actually to provide central air conditioning, and the heating was a bonus. And as you'll see, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the units that were put in. The slide on the right shows 1 unit for each floor. And then the slide on the left shows, if you look at the downspout, you can see the exterior work over to the left of the downspout. You see a blue, kind of what looks like a downspout, and that's the refrigerant lines to the internal heads that are in the rooms. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see what the heads look like. And you've seen these heads all over. They're very popular in Europe and Asia, and they're becoming more popular here. And I will say that during the summer, even though it's a head in each room, the house feels like it's central air. We actually use these as a supplemental heat source. We still have our steam and hot. We have steam heat on the bottom floor and hot water heat on the top floor, and we're still using that. I kind of like the radiant heat as opposed to the heat coming from the units. That's a personal choice. And though when the furnaces go, I know that we have these units that can supply the heat, so we don't have to replace them, and they work very well. I have found if we're running them in summer, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than window units. And they're very, very comfortable. You can control the temperature in each room. Each room is in effect a zone. They can be internet enabled, though these are not. Though actually we can retrofit them for the internet for maybe $100 to $150 per unit. So it's not that expensive even for a retrofit. And then if you go to the next slide, we've done a couple of other things. We put in solar panels, and again, we put these in 2014, and with all the incentives, it was about a 4.5-year payback. So in effect, I'm getting free electricity. If you've got the roof, if you've got the exposure for solar, I would really highly recommend you investigate it. And as you heard earlier, there are various ways to finance it. We just paid for it, which is the most, if you can afford it, it's the most advantageous way to you. And it's funny, I was just computing how much my total electricity costs for the whole house has been since we've put it in. And we have been paid about $4,500 for electricity. We haven't, we have, so they've been paying, the utility company's been paying us for electricity rather than us paying for electricity. And then the last thing we put in, and if you go to the next slide, I believe, whoops, we put in an electric car charger. And right now I'm in between electric cars. My last one went off lease, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the car market to calm down a bit, and for more electrics to come out. I'm resisting buying a Tesla, but there's a lot more coming out now. So probably by spring or summer, I'll have another electric car.
Okay, Peter.
Good evening, everybody. I need to see myself on the screen. Do I get in the middle? I'm stay here. Okay.
Yeah.
At any rate, my name is Peter Moyer. I live in this house, 267 Walnut Street, the one with the ramp. And I have 3 quick comments. Number one, I do have an induction stove, which I love. It does all the things that people talked about. There's no gas exposure in the house. The stove is actually safe. I have grandchildren in the house. And one of the things that people didn't mention is that it rapidly heats up, much like a gas stove, which is the advantage always touted for a gas stove. So although they're more money, they're about $1,000 more than a regular electric stove, I think they're, if you can afford the $1,000, they're well worth it. The second thing I have is heat pumps. That's been a challenge for me. I wanted to do it largely for environmental reasons, but I also wanted to use the heat. I do use both heat, and as Neil said, you can use it for air conditioning as well. I would pretty much echo his comments in terms of their effectiveness. The air conditioning part, the cooling part in the summer is both cheap and very effective, and it air conditions the house, although I don't have all rooms air conditioned. We have the 3rd floor, which you can see underneath the solar roof is not, doesn't have any heads in it from the air pumps. But the rest of the house does, and it remains very cool in the summer, and in the winter, it's warm, it works. It seems to, the air is very dry. I don't know if that's any different from radiant heat from a radiator or not. Otherwise, I like it. It works fine. There's never been any inadequacy, and we've had cold days. So let me quickly tell you a little bit about how this thing works. This is the, go ahead. This is the, let me actually start. Can you go ahead, Diane, to the next few, to the heads? Keep going. Yeah, start right here. Good. So these are 2 different, what are called heads. I don't know what you can see here, but on the right is a head over a door, and the other one is a floor unit in our kitchen. You can also see that I've kept the radiator systems. These are 2 old radiators. I still have the backup gas system. I didn't quite dare get rid of it yet. I got a lot of warnings actually from various vendors that the winter times we wouldn't be able to heat adequately for the wintertime, which I think is wrong. I think you could heat, and I heat adequately with just the heat pumps, and I plan to remove the gas system at some point. So I'm really very happy with it. The financial part of it is I'm still working out. I heard Neil's comment. I hope I get there, but I'm still working out. I made some mistakes in terms of choosing vendors. I also have 100% renewable energy, but I chose Clean Choice, which was very expensive, and I'm now having to backtrack, which I'm doing. So I'm going to get my electricity from the town, from Direct. I think it's called Brookline Direct. So my comment on this is I liked the heat pumps, and I'm glad I did it. My big drawback was the initial capital expenditures, around 50 grand for me. You're going to see all the work that's going on inside our house. I think if they were going to use these in a widespread manner, we have to think of ways to subsidize it. I happen to have been able to afford it, although I stopped at 50,000. I didn't do the 3rd floor because I was running out of money. So I think we have to think about how we're going to finance these. Moving on. So this is it. This is the system. These are what are called branch boxes. They're in our basement. I'm not going to go through all the different tubings, but each of the 2 branch boxes, each one of them receives 4 of these tubings from a total of 8 heads in the house. And then at the bottom of each of these boxes, these branch boxes, you'll see there should be a single tube which goes out to the condensers in the back of the house. We saw that picture. So that's the condensers in the back of the house. The condensers are hooked in to these 2 branch boxes, and then they in turn go to 8 different heads throughout the house. The whole thing was done, this is on your left, you'll see an example of this. The whole thing was done internally. I actually talked about doing it externally, but we're in the historic commission. I knew it wouldn't work, so we didn't waste much time on it. And they were honest and said, it's not going to work. We couldn't do what Neil did in terms of making would-be downspouts on the outside of the house. They weren't having it. So we did it internally. That's a closet, just one example. It really has not been very obtrusive. If you were to walk into our house, you would hardly notice it. You wouldn't notice it. So I'm happy with the heat pumps.
Let's look at the solar panels.
Look at the solar panels. Solar panels was also, they're particular, you can see they're a glass. They're called sun slates. They're made by a company in California, Sacramento, called Atlantis. I had tried to put on solar panels. The Historic Commission said no, just for cosmetic reasons. So this was the alternative. And now I think there are a number of sun slates. I just looked at this afternoon. A number of different companies make them. Ours has worked fine. It's got a 20-year guarantee for weatherization, 20-year guarantee for energy production. It has withstood, if you remember, maybe 5-7 years ago, we had a significant hailstorm, nothing cracked. So I'm happy with them. And they produce energy. I don't have exact readings. I'd like to be able to, but I have an inverter in the basement, which converts it from DC to AC, and it also gives me a readout of the energy. So I'm happy with all 3 of these, although my worry on both of these on heat pumps, as well as the roof, is I think we really need advisors, much like you all are doing. I'm very appreciative to Dean and Diane and Wendy for organizing this, because I think we need much more citizenry information and intelligence gathering. Having talked with Diane the last few days, it's going to save me a lot of money switching away from Clean Choice, for instance. So I do think we need somebody to convene. I don't see much motion in the town. I see all of us are interested in it, but I think if we're really going to move ahead and be someplace by 2030, we really need a central organization which would offer information, advice, etc., much like Mass Save does, but in a different way, for a different purpose. So that's me.
Okay, great. So I'm up next. I'm Diane Sokol. I live on Cypress Street, so I'm in the Greater Point neighborhood, and we have a 2-family house, just like Neil. We installed a year ago, we installed heat pumps on the 3rd floor of our house. Our goals were a little bit different. Our first goal was to reduce the use of fossil fuel for heating our house. But then we also wanted to add air conditioning to our third floor because those bedrooms just cooked up there under the roof, unbearably hot. And in our house, we didn't want those typical wall units on our walls because up on the third floor, most of the walls are actually sloped ceilings. There wasn't a lot of vertical walls. So we put in a different sort of system that you'll see. It's called a ducted mini split. So I'm going to start with this little diagram, and then I'll show you photos. So this is a section cut through our house. There's an outdoor condenser, just like you saw in the other two examples. What's different here is that we have a piece of mechanical equipment on the third floor. It's called an air handling unit, or AHU. So these same refrigerant lines, those black pipes that you saw in Peter's photos, refrigerant lines connect the condenser outside to this piece of equipment on the third floor. And then from that piece of equipment, there's ductwork that goes into the attic. And then from the ductwork, the air comes down into the rooms on the third floor. There's also a large return air grill. Oh, that's okay. You can go on. So here's a picture of the condenser. It sits on the edge of our driveway, not a big visual impact, and it's actually very quiet too. So this is a little tricky. Inside the house, this is the third floor hallway. You can see on the left, there's a little line in the wall. That's a panel. And when you take off the panel, then you see the mechanical equipment, the air handling unit behind that. So really not a big visual impact in the house, the equipment that we're seeing. And really what we see on the third floor is just these little square grills in the ceiling. You know, the ceiling grills, the heating and cooling are very quiet. It's gentle and uniform. And I was happy to get rid of our dusty old radiators because we have better floor space to put our furniture. So this system, it's still called a heat pump and mini splits, but it's called a ducted mini split heat system. And we were able to do that because we have some attic space above the third floor where we could put the ducts. When we go ahead and do our second floor, that won't be possible. We'll have to do a different sort of system. So next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about planning ahead for larger scale projects. I'm an architect, as Dean said, so planning is just sort of part of my nature, what I do. So maybe you or your landlord are interested in taking further actions towards decarbonization. And I think it can be helpful to really think ahead and think through some of the steps so you're prepared if your heating system goes out. Again, I like to plan using these same three principles of reduce energy demand, electrify everything, and use 100% electricity. So we can go on. So here's our house again. I'll talk about the insulation and the air sealing that we did to weatherize our house, again, to reduce the energy demand. So what Wendy had said earlier is really important. Your house is an essential part of your heating system. So by improving the performance of our house, the exterior of our house, our heat pumps were able to operate more efficiently and with less electricity use, which means less cost. Next slide. Again, if we peel off the front layer of the house, we can see a section through the house. So with the Mass Save program, we had contractors install blown-in cellulose insulation from the exterior of the house. And Mass Save has special programs for 2 to 4 unit buildings. And so as a 2-family house, we received 100% incentives from Mass Save. So we had this work done for 0 money on our part. In the section drawing, you can see in red the areas that were insulated by Mass Save. They couldn't address the entire house, but this was a big start in getting our house insulated. Next slide. So when we took on a bigger construction project last year, we took care of the drainage problem that we had in the basement, and the contractors added spray foam insulation to the inside of our basement stone foundation walls. You can see the before and the after photos. Now you can see more red on this section drawing, the basement walls, the slab, which is a long story, and the connection between the foundation walls and the exterior walls. So next slide. Along with the basement, the contractors insulated the trickier areas up on the 3rd floor under the sloped roof, in the eaves and the attic. And so the goal here was to connect all of these red shaded areas. So the house is really wrapped with a more complete layer of insulation, and also that all of these air leaks would be blocked. So this really helped make our house stay warm in the winter and also much cooler in the summer. And because we live on a busy street, Cypress Street, it has also made the house a lot quieter. Next slide. So planning ahead for the electrification of our house, we took a further step and installed solar panels on the roof. So it's sort of hard to see the solar panels in this photo because they blend in pretty well with the roof. Our panels have been operating for 2 years now, and we like seeing all those zeros on the top part of our electricity bill. That means that each month we're generating more electricity than we're using, and that's partially because we went through all of those efforts to reduce our energy demand. Right now, we're building up a credit on our electricity bill for when we complete the transition off of fossil fuels to be a fully electric house. And in December, we did pay $75 for electricity, but that came out of our credit, since December was a low solar production and high heat pump use. Next slide. So electrifying everything can be a challenging step in an older home, getting rid of all the gas piping and all the gas connections through the house. This is where planning can really help. So we looked at all of the equipment and the appliances in our house that were fueled by gas, oil, propane, or gasoline. So we had 2 gas stoves, 1 in each of the apartments. We had 2 gas clothes dryers, 1 in the basement for the 1st floor apartment and 1 on the 3rd floor for our apartment. 2 gas-fired boilers for the heating systems with old-fashioned radiators, 1 boiler for the 1st floor apartment and a larger one for our apartment. And then 1 gas hot water heater. That's a separate unit providing hot water for showers, dishwashing, 1 large water heater for the whole house. And we own 1 car that runs on gasoline. So eventually all of these items will need to be transitioned from fossil fuels to electricity. So with the work that we did last year, we switched out both of the gas stoves to electric induction, and we changed the upstairs dryer to electric. It was a gas dryer, changed it to electric, but we also hang our laundry to dry. We installed the heat pumps for the 3rd floor, that's the upper level of our apartment. And so by removing the radiators on that floor, we've really cut down the use of our boiler. It's really only heating the 2nd floor now. So we hope to be able to install heat pumps on our 2nd floor next, and that would take care of the other half of the heating system. So we've made good progress, but you can see that we still have a lot more electrification work to do until we're a fully decarbonized home. So happy to be on this decarbonization path with all of you neighbors and colleagues. And now I will hand the presentation back to Dean.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, Diane, Peter, and Neil for sharing with all of us the great work that you've been doing. It's very, very impressive and educational for all of us, I think. And I think the rest of us may be wondering how much all of this will cost. There is one easy answer, but it's a frustrating answer to that question. It depends. Every home is different. Every heat pump system is different. However, we will try to give you a little bit of information. Next slide, please. How much do heat pumps cost? The cost for a simple heat pump system with a single indoor head could range from $4,000 to almost $10,000, and up to $25,000 or more for a large whole house system. You heard from Peter, right? 50,000, 8 heads is what I heard. The only way to know how much a heat pump will cost is to talk to various contractors, and that part of it should be free. Next slide, please. Keep in mind that there are rebates and incentives through the Mass Save program. Hopefully at the end of January, the end of this month or early into next month, we will be hearing about the new round of 2022 Mass Save rebates for heat pumps. The Mass Save website currently says, as you can see on this slide, you can get up to $15,000 back. But this would likely be for a whole house system that's replacing oil heat with electric. And so somebody like me, I need to go from natural gas to electric. I couldn't use this at all. Mass Save also offers interest-free loans, and a lot of the Mass Save weatherization work, such as insulation, is free or highly discounted. So definitely worth starting with Mass Save. And if the Commonwealth is serious about retrofitting 1 million homes by 2030, we will need to be seeing much more serious programs offering financial help as well as technical help. Next slide. So resources. For everyone who RSVP'd for the event, we will be sending a follow-up email with links to various resources and ideas. Here are some of the local and national groups that have helpful websites and videos about home decarbonization. And don't forget, of course, your neighbors are a terrific resource as well. Next slide. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know that we covered a lot of information and a lot of images all at once. Before we move on to the questions, we have put a link into the chat for a quick survey about this event. We need to hear from you so we can make improvements before offering this to other audiences around Brookline and beyond. So if you could please just take one moment to go to the chat to fill out the survey, and we will organize some of the questions that have been put through into the chat. And we're also putting our contact email address in the chat again, so you can be sure that we have your email address. And if you want to, you could please send us suggestions for other audiences, neighborhoods for this kind of a webinar. That would be really helpful to us. And when we get ready for questions, which is probably about now, I am turning this over to Ann Coles, who is a super Mothers Out Front member and a super neighbor in the Greater Point district or Greater Point neighborhood. So Ann has been following along with the chat and will go through the questions with us.
Actually, Dean, we have only one question in the chat. I'm sure people have lots of other questions. So after Neil, this is a question for you, Neil, after he answers the question, then maybe people could put their hand up. Does everyone know how to put your hand up in the, I think it's under, what's it under?
Reactions.
Under reactions. Yeah. So it's just a little hand, just put it up and then we'll call on you. Neil, this is a question from Diana McClure, and it's regarding your solar panels. What about when you need to replace your roof? What happens to the solar panel removal and replacement once that job is done?
Yeah, one of the things we did prior to putting the solar panels in, our roof was about 22 or 3 years old. So we preemptively threw on a new roof before we did the solar panels. I'm told, though I haven't experienced this, the panels can be taken off to replace the roof and then put back on, but that's an additional expense and there's always risk. So if you're doing this, you should really, if you're putting solar panels on your roof, you should really assess your roof. And if it's getting to the end of its life, you should replace it before you do the solar panels.
And we had a similar experience to Neil. Our roof was 25 years old. Unlike most things in our house that we take well beyond its useful life, we decided to put on a new roof after 25 years. And just one detail, usually when roofers come, they'll put something called ice and water shield at the bottom 6 feet or 9 feet of the roof. Ours on the south side with the solar panels that ice and water shield went all the way up just to protect the roof a little bit more because they're screwing in these support systems. So new roof before the solar panels.
Right. So there are a couple more questions that have come in recently. But why don't I go first to John Harris and then Scott, and then we'll come to Karen and Margot's questions. John.
Yeah, hi, thank you. My question is, what permits from the town are necessary for, and what costs for those permits for everybody, number one, and then what permits, what extra permits or what extra costs or whatever occurred for Peter or anybody else who was in a historic district in town to do this?
I guess I can speak a little bit about the building permits. Anytime you do construction in the house that's more than painting and finishing the floors, you have to file for a building permit, and it's usually the contractor that does that. So it's all based on the cost of the work and a certain percentage.
Yeah, and it was pretty pro forma. It wasn't a major, it wasn't a major expense. One little tidbit: if you put solar panels on your roof, it increases the value of your house. The assessor is prohibited from assessing that increase in value due to the solar. So that's just a little tidbit.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Well,
John,
and I'm sorry, just the second half, in terms of, Peter, you were in a historic district. So what extra costs in terms of permitting or whatever? And then secondly, what extra cost was there to do that interior, wiring conduit as opposed to the outside downspout kind of things?
Peter, can you answer?
You have to unmute, Peter.
You're muted.
Sorry, the first question was relative to repeat the first question?
About the historic district, you had to go before the preservation.
Yes, I actually went, if that's what you're asking, I went before them 3 different times. It was all very interesting. And by the 3rd time, I had the current shingles as my proposal, and they accepted it. But that's not your question. Additional permit? I didn't have to do anything additionally. I had my sister who's an architect and is able to present well, and the people who actually did the solar roof with Sunbug, they presented, but there was no additional cost as such.
And what about additional costs there might have been for the different kinds of installation you had to do?
I'm sure. I didn't actually compare the cost, but the idea of having the lines go up the outer part of the house seems simple, but they weren't. I knew they wouldn't do it because I had my experience with them. They weren't about to do anything on the outside of the house. They just wouldn't touch. So it's true. That was the most difficult part. You have to carve through it was Atlantic Heating. They did an excellent job, but they've got to go through the closets and all this hidden areas of your house in order to do it. So that's what it took 3 weeks. They said 2 weeks, and they did it in 3 weeks, which I thought was actually pretty fast.
Yeah, my job was, I think, about 4 or 5 days from start to finish.
Yeah.
Mine was 4 or 5 months.
Okay, is that everything, John?
Thank you. Yes, I'll
Yeah,
get rid of my
okay.
hand there.
Yeah, Scott?
Yeah, so for better or for worse, we're about to go through a sort of major renovation, which the good news is we may be able to go completely decarbonize all at once. But one thing I'm already experiencing with our likely contractor is his thinking that the heat pumps won't work well enough, and him wanting to keep the current system also present. And I'm just wondering, what resources can I use? I don't want to get. I like the contractor. I don't want to get in an argument with him, but I'd like to persuade him that, and ourselves, that we don't need to keep the old system. What are the good resources for figuring that out?
So has the contractor chosen a mechanical contractor who would install?
He has somebody he works with, and it's somebody who does do heat pumps. I don't think, I think there's still plenty of room to talk about what system we use. And in other words, it's all negotiable in terms of what systems we use.
What companies is he suggesting, Scott?
We haven't gotten that far. I know he's working with a HVAC guy he always works with. So
My own comment is it has,
who has units in his own house, so it's not.
the opinions have to be pretty current because it changes. And I'll bet you that historically it wasn't as good in terms of a heating agent,
Yeah.
but I think now it is. Mitsubishi is the ones that we use. I don't make anything.
Yeah,
else, but
I
they seem-
found, we put a system in, we have a second home in Rhode Island. And we put a system in last year, and there's been a lot of improvements between 2014 and the last year. And we put a Fujitsu system in Rhode Island. We have Mitsubishi here, works fine. Down there, we replaced electric resistance heat. Though we kept, we didn't remove the electric resistance completely. Because we were afraid that the heat pumps would be sufficient, but
I guess what I'm, what I'm really asking is, are there good sources I can help refer the contractor to help persuade him that, that we can go all the way?
Yeah, let me think about that. Oh, connect with me, Scott, and I can think about who would be good to talk to. But basically, if your house is well insulated and sealed, and if they're doing that as part of the work, and if the heat pump system is well designed, and if it's one of these Mitsubishi cold climate heat pumps, it should work fine.
Okay.
And maybe they want to get an engineer on board just to sort of double check it.
Thanks.
Okay, I think, are you all set, Scott? Yeah, okay. So we'll go to Karen Kraut's question, which is in the chat. If your house has a slate roof and you can't have solar panels on your roof, are there other ways to capture solar energy? Who wants to take that question?
Well,
Who knows about communities? Who knows about community solar programs that you can sign up for? Does anybody here know about them?
we were getting a lot of mailings over the summer from some community solar group, which I ran into Rob Daves. We thought it was a scam, but it turns out to be a very complicated but totally legitimate system. And actually, if you go to the website for the Brookline Green Electricity, when we do the resource page, I'll try to find the page where they explain what this community solar program is and how it can actually supplement the Brookline or complement the Brookline 100% green. If you live on a huge farm, you can always put ground mounted solar panels, but I don't think many people in Brookline live on a big farm like that.
And Diane, I want to make one other point about community solar. When I looked into it for the church, the UU church, because we have slate up there and have just decided don't put solar panels on the church, although I was very disappointed. Sunbug will do it. Anyway, if you can sign up with community solar and it will lower your rate. I mean, maybe 5%, maybe 10, but maybe not. So if you're paying a lot for electricity, you can get a 5% discount. Like Peter Moyer, you're paying a lot for electricity. Or those of us who are doing 100%, I mean, it's not that much, but we could get a little bit of a break because you can complement, you can do both programs and you just get a little bit of money back. So it's like a no-brainer, except you get 2 bills or something.
It's a little complicated. You end up getting 2 bills. You get your Eversource bill, but you also get this community solar bill, but then community solar credits back to your Eversource bill. So that's why you get a 5 or 10% discount. But I'm no good at explaining it, but I think they have something posted on the Brookline Green Electricity website.
Great. Okay, next question is from Margot Casey. And I think Tracy, you'd be a good one to answer this one. And the question is, can you explain more about Mothers Out Front and how can you expand to new cities and towns? And then we'll come to Rob after you.
And thank you for that. Since this isn't the forum to talk about Mothers Out Front, Kelly and I have separately gotten her email address, and we will love to talk to her about how to expand Mothers Out Front. I think she lives in California, so we'll take that separately.
Okay, great. So Rob, you're on. Your question.
Hi, I think this is great because there's a lot of stuff we all can do. We all can't do everything, but this, we can start pecking away. And that community solar thing, I know Diane and I talked about it briefly. I didn't do my homework on that side, but it sounds a little disappointing. I was hoping it'd be just like having off-site solar panels with full rebates and full, full rebates on your bills. But there's other things that I'm curious about. We have almost everybody has, or has gas hot water heaters, and there are different versions of those of electric that are not just plain resistance ones. They're ones that store the energy, and then also for dryers, they're not just plain electric dryers. There are these ones that are like heat pumps that don't even have a vent to the outside, and they produce a little bit of condensation that you put into your drain. And so there's those are really exciting developments that are pretty easy to do because they're easy. They're just one appliance that you can buy.
Yeah, we plan, if there's interest, we can do another session on heat pump water heaters, and I'm trying to learn a little bit about solar assist heat pump water heaters, also about electric vehicles and chargers and different sorts of appliances. So, depending on the feedback on the survey, I hope everybody filled out their survey. We'll see what topics people are interested in. But there are, in the resource list, one of the organizations is called Electrify Now. They're out of Portland, Oregon. And, their videos are a little homespun. They're very West Coast. But they had a great one on heat pump water heaters and one on induction cooking. So when you get that resource page, look at some of their videos to learn more about some of these newer appliances. And the water heaters, they were actually looking ahead. There's development of water heaters, heat pump water heaters that just use 120 volt outlet, like every outlet in your house, instead of 220, 240. So all those smart people at MIT are inventing new things for us and elsewhere.
Good. Other questions, or are there other comments people want to, things you want to share that you've done in your house that would be of interest to the rest of us? Thanks, Rob.
I do have one question. I think Peter mentioned that he signed up for a different provider on his bill, and then he found out that there was a better one. And I did this a long time ago, so I'm not sure if I have the best one or not. No.
We'll also put that link to make sure that you're on the Brookline Green Electricity.
Yeah, you want to be on the town one.
Yeah. We don't know if the town one is better, but at least we know that the program has been vetted by, the State Department of Public Utilities. And we know that it's the highest quality of green electricity. So,
and we can see that on our bill somehow?
Yep. On your Eversource bill, under the supplier, it will say Direct Energy Town of Brookline. If it says, and I'll just show the image of that when we send the resource page. If it says Clean Choice Energy or some other name of an electricity company, then you're not on the town's program, and we don't know if it's a good deal or not. And often,
I can tell you, Peter does not have a good deal going on, right?
I was going to say, I can tell you, Clean Choice is not a good deal.
Not a good deal.
Often if it starts as a good deal, when the contract ends after a year, they bump you up to a higher rate. And it's just, I think it's safer and easier to just be on the town's program. And it also helps Brookline, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
Great. Peggy, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a resource for that get a guy comes and seals the outside of your house. And is that a fire hazard? I don't know. I'm so used to living in an old leaky house that I'm thinking, if you seal it all up, will we be inhaling our own toxic I don't know what. So, but if I were to seal our house, who would I call?
So
And
you
would
can,
the windows and doors still work?
yeah, you can always start with Mass Save. You know, if you're comfortable with one of their auditors coming in your house, you know, they'll start looking at some of the weatherization things. They made a laundry list of what we should do, and some of it we did. You know, or maybe there are other contractors around here who specialize in weatherization. You could work with them directly. So hopefully we can get some names.
We can get you some names, Peggy.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you all so much.
So Diane, I actually have a question about these Math Save contractors. I get mail from 3 or 4 of them saying, we'll come and do this. Is there, and I don't know which one is, you know, which one to choose.
So on the Mass Save program, there are 2 ways of doing it. Either you get Mass Save to do the energy assessment, and then you choose a contractor, or Mass Save assigns you a contractor who also does the assessment, which, you know, I'd sort of rather, you know, being an architect, I feel like I can choose the contractor. I asked for recommendations. So maybe, okay. I think if you're getting mailings from HomeWorks Energy,
yeah, exactly.
They're the path where they do the audit and the work.
So, but you can get Mass Save to do the audit.
But the other, I can't remember the name of the system. The other one is where Mass Save, you know, still it's a contractor to Mass Save,
right?
Or a consultant.
Yeah.
They do the audit, and then you get somebody else to do the work. And I actually had Mass Save come back afterwards to do this thermal scan, and they said that the work was done very well. So,
thank you. Other questions? Okay, well, no other question.
Rob, you hit your hand up.
Rob, do you have another question?
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. Just, you know, a couple of years ago, it's been a long while, but it still is a good system. People can come and do a blower door test, and what they do is they put this fan in your front door, and they suck air out of your house, and it gets a really good idea how leaky your house is. And you can put, you know, some alcohol in your hand, and you can go feel the places where the cold air is coming in. It's a great thing to do when the air is cold outside, or they'll use, you know, like a little smoky rope or something, and you can see where all the leaks are. And then, because when it's cold outside, using a thermal camera, infrared camera, you can go outside and you can just take a picture of your house from the outside and see where the heat is leaking out, or from the inside where all the cold spots are. And it lights up as clear as day. And you can rent a real high quality one from Home Depot, from Home Depot in Watertown. And you spend an afternoon, you can save all the pictures, and it gives you, it'll show you where insulation is missing. So you can do that yourself, the thermal imaging pretty easily.
I haven't checked, but when we were putting these induction cooking kits in, I didn't realize there was this library of things at the Brookline Library. And I know they have pH testers for your garden. They may have a thermal camera that you could borrow. If not, you know, we could talk to the library about getting something like that.
That's a great idea. Okay, any more questions or comments? This has been a wonderful discussion. We really appreciate all of you coming, first of all, and then all your great questions and comments in the chat. If you haven't seen scroll through the chat, I suggest that you do that. There's a lot of great stuff in it.
And Sandra did just have a last minute question. I don't know who's going to be able to answer that.
Oh, okay, John.
Everyone see that? Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, why don't you?
For those of us who are in a condo the size of the Park, which is the historic first hospital for women, we're in a unique position because we need special permission to make energy improvements.
Oh, okay, great.
So does anyone know how to handle a large building?
So I think, you know, condo associations are one issue, and then historic building another issue, but maybe the first step would be go talk with the board of your condo association and, see if, you as an individual, I think you can always call Mass Save to look at the inside of your condo. But I think to do bigger work on the outside, you would need to talk with your condo association. And, we can see if we can find other people who live in condo associations who've done this kind of work. But, the historic buildings adds one more layer of complication. And, any work that you do probably has to be done from the inside of the units.
Right. Is that helpful, Sandra? Yes?
Oh,
You're
You're on mute.
You're muted.
You're muted.
We had a condo meeting the 1st of November, and it was said that we have to go through the Brookline's conservation board. They have to consider it. You're right, it's much more complicated, but I think it's worth it in the long run. We're basically heating the outdoors. They don't want you to replace your windows, and I can understand that because they want all the windows to be uniform, but that could be through maybe 4 or 5 owners deciding to go together, and they get a special rate and they get the same windows that are approved, and you just go ahead and do it. You might not have everybody that wants to participate, but it's better than being cold and drafty.
There are also these kind of storm windows that you can put on the inside of the house. Wendy, did you say that you had some of those?
Yes. Why don't we include that in the resource email?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Good.
you.
John Harris, did you have another question or comment a minute ago? No, you're all set. Okay. Other questions? We can stay till 8:15. Great. Well, I think this has been really a terrific workshop. Thanks so much to all our presenters and all our participants. Your listening, your comments, your ideas have been really helpful. I'm going to turn this back now to Dean, who's sort of coordinating the whole thing with Diane.
Thank you, Anne. And really, thank you so much. So many neighbors are here, and I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. We will be very happy to put together other programs. We did a deeper dive into the heat pumps this evening, but there are other things that you could do a deeper dive into, right? I have to do a lot of insulation before I could even consider heat pumps because I have to tighten up my old leaky house, as Peggy said. So there's a lot more to be done, but thank you all, and we will be in touch.
Great.
Thank you. Good idea.
Thank you.
Yep. Excellent.
So long, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Mhm.
Bye-bye.
That was great.
So that was good. Hi, Marga.
That was very, very good.
Oh, thank you. I thought it went well. I hope.
Oh, it did.
It did. And Sandra, keep at it there. No, that was really good.
I was
That was
very
great.
excited on what is possible. Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
That was great.
We have a lot of information to get out to people. We'll work on that, right? Wendy
Oh, yeah.
and
When
Really?
we're not shoveling snow.
yeah.
Oh,
You guys
gosh.
are great. Very,
gonna-
very good presenters, by the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was excellent. Very
So
informative.
Wendy, do you know how to save the chat?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Oh, and turn off
I
the
think it does
recording.
save automatically. Oh,
Turn off
stop
the
recording.
recording. Yeah.
Stop
Okay.
recording.